music there. It's really good.
All right, we are live. Greetings and salutations, test takers. This is series 7. Who am I? I'm the Series 7 guru. I'm coming to you from a long day's journey into night. Last Tuesday, I was teaching a 66 before we did our live stream Q&A, and I'm in a 24 kind of a zone here, lots of 24s. The testing gods are smiling favorably on my 24s, and we got some 65s and 7s, so we're in a nice rhythm here. So take your exam soon to take advantage of our passing trend. We have our always very special guest, Brian Lee, Managing Member Test Geek Exam Prep LLC. It's helpful, we were noticing in the queue already, if you tell us what series exam you're taking, because our advice, some of our advice is can be applied to any FINRA NASAA exam, and sometimes our help with content would be particular to a particular exam. So that could be helpful. You tell us what exam you're taking, and the way they test on overlapping content can even be different. So it's not necessary, but it's helpful. So if you're in the chat, tell us what exam, put, Series S7 or SIE with a capital Q, followed by your question, and we'll do our damnedest to answer that for you. We'll take care of some housekeeping, then we'll knock out whatever content help we can provide to you. If you're looking for a free supplement to your paid study materials, there's nothing better than my YouTube channel. The YouTube channel is completely free. There's over 1,500 videos. Shocking, Brian. We're coming up on 7 million views, 50,000 subscribers. That's more views, more subscribers, more videos than any other channel. I've organized it based on your series. So if you're taking the SIE, for example, there's 4 playlists, and the playlists are in suggested watch order, and the videos within them are in suggested watch order. It's a buffet. Take what you like, leave what you don't. Now, if you're looking for a particular item, put in, for example, accrued interest, and all that content will magically appear. It's okay. We know, Brian, people are going to ask us questions that we have answered many, many times. We're more than happy to do it again. But if you go into channel search bar, you don't have to wait till Tuesday. You might find in a previous Tuesday or a previous video that content is available to you. Now, if you're looking for a paid supplement, I think the ideal paid supplement would be a Kaplan Q Bank if you don't already have it. With the Guru 15 discount code at checkout, the Series 7 Q Bank with over 3,600 questions, a performance tracker, is $55.80. And then Brian has been kind enough to provide a 20% discount on his content test key. And Brian is a master of distillation of the, study materials into its testable content, right? No fluff with the test key, no fluff. Now, everything on my channel is free. Everything on my booking page mostly is paid. But if you go to deantenneytutoring.setmore.com, not only is there tutoring there are class tabs, and there are some free things. I do a free jam session. Anybody's welcome to join us for the jam session. I do a free office hour for paid students. And I think I got one more free thing. I don't know what it is, but there's not much, but there's some stuff there. Oh, coaching calls. If you win tonight, the coaching call, you do not win a tutoring session at a date and time of your choice. You win a coaching call, and you go to the class tab, you'll see coaching call, and you register, and that's what you win in the drawing. You're not alone. We have a Facebook community. Brian Craze, these various study groups are forming on that Facebook community. We have somebody looking for a 65 study buddy study groups, 66 study buddy study groups, and a Series 7. I put the link to that Facebook community in the community post page on my YouTube channel. So again, you're not alone. Feel free to join us in one of our other communities. We have Reddit communities. We have a subreddit for Series 6, our Series 60, R6. We have a subreddit for SIE and Series 7. We have a subreddit for NASA exams, our Series 66. And we have for 9, 10s, and 24s, 79s, 57s. We have a Reddit in 24, and boy, we've been killing it in 24 lately. All right, so let's go back. And now we'll see what we got cooking in chat. Boom, boom, boom. CT, I take the exam in 2 days. But we're just talking about this, CT. Brian, I've been able to reverse engineer that you must be taking the SIE
Correct.
because it's the only one that has a FINRA exam. CT, I'm concerned about the variance in your chat here. So you start with an 85% in the Q bank. I don't know if that means on the Q bank questions you've done. Then we have a 59.75. Then we got a 76 on the mastery. I don't like the variance, but it should work in your favor. A 70.67 on the mastery Kaplan. You should pick up some points. So I would like to say, if I were a betting person, I would be betting that you're going to be making your mark. If you can provide us some more data, that would be helpful. I'm a little concerned with the variance in the data. But at the end of the day, the most important, I think, reliable thing is you got a 70 on a Kaplan mastery. And I would say that means you're in good shape. Brian, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, especially the mastery. That's
tough.
10, 12% tougher than the test.
I think so. And, it's designed to be that way. So, Kaplan, neither Brian and I are Kaplan employees, but, Kaplan wants you to be pleasantly surprised, not unpleasantly surprised, right? I told you, oh, man, this person got a 66 on their last Kaplan score, which was yesterday. And she said, damn it, Dean, I'm going to go test. And she passed. Wow. I would prefer she be in the mid 70s, but, high risk, high reward. All right, there you go. Brandon, we think you're going to make your mark on your 6. I don't think you're going to have any problems.
Looking good.
Just failed the 65 3 times. Ugh. I want to take a minute over. My window opens September. What advice should I do for your studying? Well, Brian and I, Jeff, think it's too long to keep your plane in flight between now and October or even September, because I think you'd run out of fuel before you got to the landing strip, right? So I think, Jeff, what I would recommend is just try and relax, refresh, reset. I would try and get as plugged in as I can to maybe reading the Wall Street Journal, watching CNBC, try and kind of get in the mode of investments and economics and securities without really drilling down. And then I think about 8 weeks out. That's when I would pick up my study effort again. I take a lot of time, Jeff, to kind of think, okay, what am I going to do different this time? So we're going to have to make some changes in whatever you're doing. Brian, we don't know your scores, Jeff. I think we've seen you have joined us previously, and I think you had almost passing scores. And Brian and I both believe when that's the case, it may not be knowledge deficit. It might be test taking technique. So give that some thought before you start down that execute that study plan again. Brian, your thoughts on October?
Yeah, 8 weeks at least. I might even start looking into stuff in 10 weeks out.
Okay.
Get back into that mode. Again, we've got to diagnose where the issues are. If it's just test taking, then we got to start looking at how we take the test, right? Keep it simple. Stay with what you know. Don't overthink this stuff. That's one thing you have to look at. Also, use the performance tracker from Kaplan if you haven't already to isolate where these weak spots are. And one last thing, the content outline for the Series 65. You got to get it. Go down there, take an inventory of those concepts. Maybe those questions then don't look so foreign to you.
Yeah, Jeff, the other thing I would tell you is when you reignite your study plan, you can either do that by lightly kind of easing into it, by reading. I had a guy today, and he's reigniting his study plan. I wanted him to do a practice test, not because we care about that data point right yet. We just want a starting place. And so sometimes taking just a practice test, not getting too wrapped up in the score, is a good way to just kind of see what's still up there residually and go from there.
Perfect.
66. All right, Stephanie. Woohoo. My coach is telling me I got to get in the 80s using past perfect. What a dread. Well, Brian and I are different. I would prefer you're getting a mid 70 than, you're getting an 85 on past perfect. I had somebody, Jake, who was in lock learning in her cohort. Lock learning mean they're not allowed to move on to past perfect unit 19 until they are proficient, according to the coach, 85 plus. And she was stuck on margin, and it just hurt my heart, Jake. She's paying me $300 an hour to do margin questions pass perfect that she's never going to see on her exam. And so that's one of the dangers of why I don't particularly care for that as a study technique. Brian and I think you do a unit, you do 25, 30 practice questions, quiz, you test for proficiency. 75 is kind of our mark. Higher the better. I mean, if you can get mid 80s, hey, God bless you. No problem. But mid 70s and move on. The problem with that locked learning, and what I hate, is you get jammed up and then you never get to the finish line because you're stuck on some, thing that we know you're not going to get heavily tested on, partnerships or margin or something like that. Anyways, I feel like I'm ready for CFP. Well, I've told very senior people at Kaplan that the past perfect salespeople deserve a bonus, because I think, Jake, that they've convinced some companies that not only will Jake pass his test, he'll have enough product knowledge to go out there and sell stuff. I don't believe that. I think product knowledge comes after you pass your test from sales efforts, not passing the test. To me, passing the test is the most important thing, because that's the barrier to entry into the securities industry. I don't think of it any more than that. So past perfect's a little different. Brian, your thoughts? I know we both aren't big fans of past perfect. I would say, before I turn over to Brian, Jake, too much is better than not enough. So it's better than past perfect. I had somebody social me. I said they're obtuse and, they got too much stuff, but that's better than not enough. Your thoughts, Brian?
I got one word: ditto.
Yeah. So
I don't want to get too locked into past perfect.
Yeah. By the way, Jake, if you have the resources, consider getting a paid supplement just to confirm actual test issues. So you'll know when you're, past perfect is dragging you into the weeds on something that, isn't really a big deal. Exempt transactions, they're good. That's great. At this point, I'm almost done with my studying. What is something for the 66 I need to spend my last study hours or focus on? Yep, Brian, you got some advice there?
Discounted cash flow.
Discounted cash flow. Well, there you go. Brian has a nice video on his free YouTube channel on discounted cash flow. I would add to that, Avery, make sure you review customer accounts. That's low-hanging fruit, just to kind of refresh it. Disclosures and unethical business practices. But it sounds like you already got that. So I think you're in good shape. Have my 65, and now I'm taking the 7 on Friday. Well, that's kind of a weird sequence. I love it. You feel good with options, mutual funds, and munis. That's 60 plus questions, so that's great. 65s on practice tests, zipping through them to get. It looks like there's a second chat here. I have my 65. Look, I'm missing Jeff. I don't know if it's coming later in the chat. I don't like, maybe I'll see the second part of this and I'll change my mind. I don't like your zipping through them, right? That kind of concerns me, because, if I were your corporate trainer, yeah, I'm zipping through my practice tests. I'm like, okay, wait a minute. We Jeff, want to use a practice test to do an intellectual inventory and get a marker where we're at. And the most important thing about doing it is remediation, identifying areas of weekend before we queue up the next practice test. You should be spending more time, Jeff, going over the practice test you've completed than the practice test itself. So I'm a little about that zipping through part. Maybe we're going to find another chat here, Brian, that will redeem that phraseology. Are you uncomfortable like me I am with zipping through them?
That's exactly right. It's so important. It's just an inventory. Most people think that the practice final, the simulated exam, is the goal, but it's not. The goal is, what's my strengths? What's my weaknesses? Let me work on my weaknesses. The remediation. Take inventory and remediate. That's the important part.
And, you shouldn't be doing more than one practice test a day. If you're doing it right, that should be plenty. And Brian and I get really aggravated with people who are, Brian's point, where there's still some OGs out there who think that the way you pass tests is to just power through practice tests without reading the book, without doing remediation. And that's just not true. So, be careful. All right. Woo! Yeah, I thought, Stephanie, your name looked familiar. I love it. Took the Kaplan Live in April. Woo! I love it. Totally boosted. I'm thinking you meant confidence, autocorrect or spelling. But that's so key. And thanks for joining us. And I would imagine, Stephanie, that was the last leg of your testing journey. You had completed the test taking registration, a hat trick. Woo! Now, I don't know why those of you who are joining us this evening wouldn't believe in what Brian and I tell you, but we have a victorious test taker in the house, and maybe Stephanie would be willing to tell you about her draw. Now, remember, every draw is a little different. Stephanie can't tell us what question 35 was, but she can tell you what she felt was strong on or weak on. But be careful. Don't put too much into any one person's draw because yours could be different. But that being said, thanks for coming in, Stephanie. It's, I had this discussion last week. You are not alone in these exams. We have this community. We have the Facebook community. We have the Reddit community. You can join me for a Kaplan class. And I just really think it's nice. And I just want to say thank you so much for coming back as a victorious test taker, because I really think it's, Stephanie, a great morale boost for people when we get victorious test takers like yourself come back, tell us they made their mark. So thank you so much. You're always welcome as a victorious test taker, even though Brian and I know, Stephanie, that we came into your life for a reason and a season. The reason for you is to pass your exams. The season is how long that takes you. And it looks like our reason and season has concluded, but you're always welcome. You are always welcome to join us. June 23rd, I failed too many times. I'm ready for my pass. I like it, Stephanie. That is the attitude. That's the right attitude. So we're going to make sure you do, or you get across the finish line this time for sure. All right, another victorious test taker. Yeah, being the 63, don't wait too long. It's the Uniform Securities Act. I have a great video, the Mighty 90 on the Uniform Securities Act. Be careful of the time constraint on the 63 and the limited number of performance opportunities. And boy, if there wasn't ever an exam to practice, drill, and rehearse, this is certainly it. Ryan, your thoughts on 63?
Take it no more than 10 days. By the end of next week, you'll be done. Get it out of the way. The success rate for people who pass the 7 on the Series 63 is remarkably high.
Yes.
Now, we talked about some of the exams that have really remarkably low pass rates. The 63 for Series 7, folks, is remarkably high.
Yeah, when I was a practitioner, Brian, I would give people a week. Say you should have this done by the end of the week. There you go. We talked about that one already. I think if I accidentally skip you, just put it back in the chat, because sometimes I accidentally skip somebody when I'm looking to see. I think we got that one done. We did that one, Jeff. We did both Stephanie's.
Did you get lost?
Yeah, I did. I was looking for the other part of Jeff's thing, and I got
right.
But zipping and skipping through it a little just to get more content. Yeah, well, I think we just answered that, Jeff. I don't know about Brian, but those two words scare me. I don't like the words zipping and skipping. Is not something I would ever recommend for a NASA exam, particularly. Right, so mid-60s. Yeah, I would say, Jeff, I don't know if Brian will agree with me. We only have what you put in the chat. I would say downshift, my friend. I would say let's stop zipping and skipping, and let's slow down a little bit, and let's lay some bass, and let's treat this thing with a little more respect than zipping and skipping. Past Series 6, woo! Only 4 days. Well,
4 days.
Anybody. Don't tell anybody.
Wow.
Yeah, 26 and 65 next. Well, I think of the two.
That won't take 4 days.
yeah, there you go.
The 6 I can understand a little bit.
Failed my first go, made a 66. I definitely rushed it. Okay, so yeah, listen.
Zipping and skipping.
Do it once.
That's our motto for the night.
Yeah, so yeah. Darth Brew, all right.
There he is.
All right, another victorious test taker in the house. Taking the test second time. I'm not doing well on parity questions. Well, you're going to get 2 parity questions, and parity just means equal, right? That's what the word parity means. Like I say, there's a lot of parity in the NBA. That means the teams are kind of equal. So parity, it means if I buy the bond, I'll just give an example. I pay $1,300 for a convertible bond, and it's convertible into 25 shares. So if I convert it, I'm going to be paying 52 for the stock. That's parity. The stock's probably 50, but that's important, right? Because if I don't think the stock's a $52 stock, I shouldn't buy the convertible. And then the other way would be, I tell you the stock's a $50 stock. The bond is convertible to 25 shares of the $50 stock. And we tell you at $12.50 would be parity. You can put parity into the channel search bar, and literally there will be 15, 20 videos of me walking people through parity questions. You're only going to get 2. They're pretty straightforward. I just did a tutoring session yesterday, and she had the most obtuse parity questions, like adjusting for dividends and splits, and she's not going to see that. So it's a waste of her time. Stock splits, this I would know. Not can you do the adjustment in the conversion price or conversion ratio, even though that's what we ended up doing in this tutoring session. But I would know that the trust indenture is a contract between the issuer and the trustee for the benefit of the bondholders. And I, as a convertible bondholder, want to be able to convert into the same proportion ownership. So that means my new conversion feature ratio is going to be more shares at a lower price. She literally, Brian, had a 2-paragraph question, and all she had to do was know more shares at a lower price. Answer C, we're out. She's got her answer. So parity's there. I would watch my lecture. I have a whole lecture on convertible bonds. So just put convertibles, parity, and I have all kinds of content for you. Be careful. Just because there's a lot of content on it doesn't mean it's a big deal on the test. You think 2, Brian? I think 2.
At the most, yeah.
I always say it this way. If you tell us that you missed your mark on the 7 because of adjustments to convertible bonds ratio and prices, no, you had bigger problems elsewhere, my friend. Passed the 7 last Wednesday. Woo! There we go. 1 more to go. I like it. We have 2 Stephanies. I'm not sure if the same Stephanie. We got a Stephanie Lawson, and we got a Stephanie Brunard. I got to change my tutoring booking page, Brian, because it does it by first name. And so I have all kinds of Brians. I never know which one's which. Last week, I studied 1 chapter a day, did well in quizzes. After taking a weekend break, I felt like I forgot things. Well, I don't believe in taking completely weekend breaks. I think you should do enough to keep your rhythm. I call it keeping your rhythm. I think of basketball players, right? Take a shoot around, make sure you're keeping your rhythm. So I don't believe in taking the entire weekend off. I think you should give yourself a time to do that. But I guess what I would tell you is, how about instead of taking a weekend break, maybe Saturday morning or Sunday morning, just do 30, 40 questions, maybe 10, 15, review some notes lightly just to keep that rhythm. So you're not starting cold on Monday. Your thoughts on that, Brian?
Absolutely. I wouldn't take a break.
Yeah.
And you're right. On the weekend, if you have to, because I know we have other obligations, families, those sorts of things. But, there's no reason why you can't do a little shoot around, as you said, on Saturday and Sunday. It's a perfect analogy. It really is.
I call it, Noah, the 747 principle. It takes a 747, 120% of rated power to get off the ground. That seat back nose, and that's kind of what your study plan is, right? In the initial phases of your study plan, nose back, seats up, it only takes a 747, 70% of rated power to stay in flight. So once you have your study plan in flight, you want to keep it in flight. And the way you keep it in flight is by not having those breaks, right? You want to make sure you get to the landing strip, as I said, with enough fuel to stick the landing. And part of that is making sure you have a nice rhythm. Series 7 and not ready. Well, that kind of thinking ain't going to do you any good tonight. Right? So, Lisa, I hope I pronounced that right. This is some stinking thinking. So what you need to do, you can do it right now. We can't hear you. I want you to go into your bathroom. I want you to look in the mirror, and I want you to say, mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the greatest Series 7 test taker of them all? Lisa, Lisa, Lisa. Hoorah! Right? So tonight, you're kind of done, so you need to make sure tonight you try and get what confidence you can, get a good night's rest, because you need your reading skills in top form. you're as ready as you're going to be if you're going tomorrow. So I don't like that you're beating up your own self. Let the test beat you up. Don't beat up yourself. Let somebody else do that for you, right? So I don't like that. So no, we're with you. We're sending you good test vibes. We're ringing the bell for you. I'll tell you what I'm going to do for you. I don't do this very often, and I hope nobody turns me in. But I'm going to call FINRA, and I'm going to arrange for you tomorrow to get a dream draw. I'm going to say, listen, I just want you to ask her questions on all the things she's prepared for. None of this esoteric, obtuse kind of stuff. So you're going to get a dream draw tomorrow, and you're going to take this thing down. That's what we're sending your way. There you go. Attitude. Oh, my goodness. What happened? Did I accidentally? Oh, man. Ooh, look at that. Patrick. Ooh, Pat Mac. Woo. Test Geek money well spent. So, man. So, well, if you already bought Test Geek, I think that's my $99 then. No, I'm teasing. I will make sure Brian and I will host an adult beverage in your honor. So, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
And congratulations.
Yeah, kudos. Almost forgot to ring the bell for him. How can I do that? That $99 kind of got me. I'm struggling with my chats tonight. I don't know why I'm struggling so much with the chat thing. Took your count. Well, okay, I did that. Again, if I miss you, just put it in the chat because I'm struggling a little bit here. I don't know why tonight I'm struggling to keep up with this chat thing. Series 7, there we go. Boom, boom, boom. We did that one. Series 6, we did that one. We certainly got our super chat from Patrick. Thank you so much. That is 65. So kudos, investment advisor representative.
There we go.
At Ryan, I have sent a few messages via Test Geek site, but haven't seen a reply. Well, maybe because he's Brian, not Ryan. That might be one of the problems. But Brian, I think I have a banner for you. Where do I have it? Maybe not. Don't I have a?
Am I ghosting someone again, Dean?
I don't know. But Brian and I, let me just, it's Brian at testgeekexamprep.com. Is that right, Brian?
Yep.
Okay. So there we go. Let me put that in there.
Do it tonight. I will return it tonight. That's it.
But first, let me apologize on behalf of myself and Brian. I don't know if Brian has the same problem. I consider myself not to be a flake, but I literally get some mornings hundreds of unsolicited emails. Right. And as much as I try and respond, sometimes it falls through the crack. And so I always tell people, hey, feel free to give me a nudge and say, like you did, hey, I sent you 5 emails, whatever the case may be. And, like I say, so it's not intentionally, same as the chat, right? It's not intentional. We just, we get lots of people seeking our help, which, we like that, but it's hard to keep up some days. Brian, do you have that same problem some days? Or are you just getting? I
do. I've set a routine, typically 7 a.m. in the morning. I dedicate at least an hour to do nothing but emails. Yeah,
it's tough. And then we're always in the quandary too about whether to dial up or dial back our activities. Work is the last refuge for people who don't have other things to do. And both Brian and I have other things we enjoy, other commitments. And so it's hard, to balance that. So as I told Brian, I struggle all the time with that balance of how many people can I really help? There's only so many hours in the day. And, Series 7 study here. In both of your opinions, what are the most difficult topics for students to grasp on Series 7 that you see in your tutoring? Well, I would put options in that mix, certainly. I passed the SIE last week, so kudos. Let's give you the bell for that. So would you say options, Brian?
Initially, options is usually the hardest thing for people starting. Eventually, however, most do really proficient on them. For test-taking purposes, I think the most difficult, because no one really duplicates them well, are those suitability questions on the test. And there's so many of them.
Okay, well, let's back up, okay, because I would not call that a topic. Harold, there are 3 styles of questions you get on your Series 7. you get recognition, you get practical application, and you get judgment. So those are the three styles of questions you're going to receive on the test. Now, from your SIE testing victory, you know that it's mostly recognition and maybe a couple practical application, like what's the current yield, what's in the money on an option, maybe a couple, 2, 3, 4 practical application. On Series 7, what's being added to the mix are judgment questions. Those are where you go, oh man, I don't know. And Brian just brought up suitability, and that runs across all of the investment vehicles you get tested on. Mutual funds, options, muni bonds, all of those. And they're judgment questions, which makes them challenging, which means you can get to a 50-50. About 10% is judgment questions. Now, I think both Brian and I think the best way to attack those suitability questions, I will link, Harold, to a suitability playlist. I have 4 or 5 videos on suitability. I have a 2 practice tests, I think an STC or Notman, a Kaplan, one I wrote myself. There's an exercise there, so you might want to check that out. But I think it's the horse before the cart thing. I think too many people, Brian, try and jump into suitability before they intellectually own the product or the investment vehicle. In other words, like we're just talking about options. They don't know that naked calls are not smart because of unlimited loss. They don't know that a protective put is a hedge, or we'd write calls to generate additional income. So I would apply that as we're talking about options, I think. But Brian's absolutely right about it. Good news. If you get good at contract specifications, you're not struggling that a short put is an obligation to buy the stock, for example. And you can track money. And then at that point, you say, give me 125 option questions. That proficiency comes with work, sometimes tutoring. But we have lots of that on the test. So good point, Brian. Suitability people struggle with. I do think that's one of the biggest step ups from the SIE to the 7.
Yeah.
This idea of recognition on those products versus now how do we use those arrows in our quiver to help people accomplish their financial goals? And even, Harold, I'd add to this, making sure we're not making unsuitable recommendations, right? Which we know partnerships are not liquid, for example. So good point, Brian. What do you think on suitability? Do you think people struggle because of the judgment nature of it?
That and the product knowledge. You got to have good product knowledge on all products, corporate bonds, government bonds, options, mutual funds. That's where all of those suitability questions come from, is based upon your knowledge of those products. You and I both agree. It's got to be product knowledge. And you got to—
I call that, Harold, laying the base. You got to lay the base. You can't jump into suitability till the base is laid. Right. And I think some people jump in way too quick to suitability before they actually own those products. How long after a Series 6, a 63? I think right away. I see Brian doing exactly what I was thinking of saying, 3, 4, 5 days. That shouldn't take you long to knock that out. As we said, Demi, we think the big thing you got there on your horizon is at 65. 63 this week. All right, cool. You're welcome. Past the 65 back in November, my work offers a program to become an advisor. I've started studying for my SIE and to take the 7 and 66. How does the 7 and 66 compare to the 65? Well, I think every test should be respected on its own. So I don't think you should ever try and bring one exam into another exam in terms of slaying the next dragon. Those dragons are different. That being said, there is overlap on the regulatory part of the 66 and 65 and overlap on the investment vehicles. But I think they should be approached as in and of themselves, not based on your 65. What's your thoughts on that, Brian?
He doesn't need a 66. That's what I thought. It's a 63 that he needs. He's already passed the 65.
Well, that's true, but some firms, you'll be right on, Matt. Brian's saying if you have a 65, you just need a 63. That's the equivalent of 65. But who knows? Sometimes firms don't know that, Matt. So don't say Dean and Brian said, but Brian is correct. You don't. And by the way, the 63 is a hell of a lot easier. So why don't you go back to whoever it is telling you to take the 66 and say, hey, I would pretend like you haven't talked to Brian or Dean. Just say, hey, is the 63 and 65, isn't that like a 66? And if they know their of which they speak, they should say yes. And then you could say, well, can I just take that? You'll be done on a Friday. Right? That's right. All right, Brazil. I love it. Good evening from Brazil. Scoring 76 on the practice exam. Feel good. Well, I think 2 weeks is too far out. If you got a 76 on the FINRA practice exam,
Right.
we were just talking about running out of fuel before you stick the landing. I would prefer you go right away. If you got a 76 on the FINRA practice exam, I don't think you need 2 weeks. So specific advice would be, well, pace yourself. I think with a score like that, waiting 2 weeks is, I think, introducing variables like, some energy vampires around you. I'm joking, but what do you think, Brian? You think 2 weeks is a little too far out?
I was thinking the same thing with the 76 on the FINRA exam. 2 weeks.
Yeah, I'd move that up. I would move that up. Maybe take another couple practice tests if you have them available. I have a whole playlist of SIE practice tests, including Brian's. Maybe just do a couple of those just to confirm that score. But I would not want you waiting around for 2 weeks. I'd go quicker, sooner rather than later. I don't know what I would tell you to do for 2 weeks after a score like that. I just think you'd be wasting your time. I just had a guy with tutoring, and I said, "Hey, I'm refunding your money because you don't need tutoring. I mean, you're ready to go, so go." What's the best advice for someone going to take 65 this Friday? Well, as I always say, the most important thing, Stephen, is to be confident in the execution of your study plan. Be confident in yourself. Most importantly, be confident in your answers on Friday. I mean, that's not material or content, but that's psyche. I think confidence is at least 10 points. Brian, what do you think from now till Friday?
Absolutely. There's a couple of things that's really interested in about this comment. You're absolutely right. We don't see any practice finals up here. So that's one thing you should be doing between now and Friday. But the other thing is about wording and, importantly, grammar. Oftentimes, I don't know if you've noticed this, team, when I do some tutoring and we were, reviewing some practice test questions, and people will just read through those test questions with no periods, I go, slow down. See the comma? That means take a break. See the period? That means stop. If they do that, see, their anxiety oftentimes will just rush them through all these things.
Yeah.
That's where the stinking thinking comes in.
I'm with you, Stephen.
It's important that you pay attention to the grammar and the punctuation, commas, periods.
I think, too, on NASAA exams particularly, I was just working with somebody this week at a tutoring session, and they were struggling with what they called wordy problems on NASAA exams, where they're like a paragraph. And I said, okay, well, this next one, let's read the last sentence first. Let's just see at the end of the question what it's about, because maybe that will help us as we read, knowing what is important, what are hints, what are pivots, what's just extraneous information. Let's also read the question answers that are available to us just to see when we get done reading what it is that's available. Sometimes that alone can trigger what we think the right answer is. Like if I read the answer set and it says as stipulated in the prospectus, I go, wow, I don't know what this question is, but that's a hell of an answer. I like that one. And then go through it and look for those pivot words. There's certain pivot or hint words. Like Brian said, the grammar can kind of hang the question or put it in a particular spot. And so again, these pivot words like unsolicited, solely clerical, federally covered advisor. So now I would tell you, Stephen, one of my favorite students of all time is her primary language is Mandarin, and she was really struggling. Not because she's not a bright lady, she's very bright. But particularly NASAA exam, she would tell me, Brian, that she would put some word from a NASAA exam into her Google Translator, no equivalent Mandarin word would come back. And she thought I was laughing at her rather than laughing with her. And I said, well, why do you think? She goes, why do you think that's funny? I said, because I don't think it's in English to begin with. So, Stephen, the other thing I would tell you is make sure you read it once just to say, okay, what do I think they're asking here? There's another thinking mind who wrote this question. I may disagree with how they wrote it, but they definitely have something in mind. And I would sometimes suggest to my people I'm helping to rephrase it in plain English so they can then attack it and answer it, right? So that would be my recommendation for you. Past the 7. Woo! There's no flow like the 7. Well, what I mean by that, Carson, is I think the 7 has a narrative flow to it. Function. There's 4 functions to be a broker. The 4 functions of being a broker are: can you find a customer? Function 1. Can you open an account? Function 2. Can you make an investment? Function 3. And then what happens after the investment? Function 4. Of those 4 functions, function 3 is the investment part. We were talking earlier about suitability. So what I think when you think of it, it has a narrative thread. That's what I mean by narrative thread. Can you find money? Can you, move money? Can you place money? Kind of what a broker does, right? It makes sense. I originate capital. I allocate capital. I manage capital. I don't think the NASAA exams have a narrative thread or flow. That's what I mean by that. They're all over the place. Now, they're organized like FINRA exams based on test specifications. But boy, those are all over the place. Laws and regulations doesn't really fit with, client and investment recommendations and vehicles. So that's what I mean by that. And I do think on NASAA exams, that lack of flow can be a challenge. It's, onesies over here and twosies over there. Now, Carson, I always say this. I always think Brian does a good job in his practice tests of mimicking actual exams, even NASAA. So if you take a Test Geek NASAA exam, it's over here, and then it's over there, and then it's over here again. So that's what I mean. Don't let me put negative vibes on your 66. But there are people who do not struggle with a 7 who do find the 66 challenging. Brian, your thoughts?
First episode of our Series 66 podcast will answer all your questions.
Love it, Carson. I'll link to that. Brian and I did a podcast, Geek and Guru, where we go over the entire 66 as a bookend, kind of, so you can get a flyover, so to speak, do a little recon of the 66. And I suggest you start every exam with that. We did it for the 65 as well. I will link to it in the video description. It may take me, maybe not tonight, maybe tomorrow, but I'll link that. You could go to the playlist and just find it. It's a separate playlist under 66, and it's always podcast overviews with Brian or myself are always the first in the playlist. We would like you to read the book cover to cover, but I understand you may not do it. So this is my version. If you're not going to read the damn book, at least watch our video to get an idea what the whole thing looks like. I don't think I think people, Stephanie, and I'll defer to Brian on this. I think people, here's how I say it. Stephanie, would I like you to know everything? The answer is yes. But I realize that, there's only so much brain space. And I think it's way more important on NASAA exams to know the state versions, the template you're being tested on, which is the Uniform Securities Act. And I think a lot of people waste a lot of brain space on the differences between the Fed and the state when it's primarily the state. So, I don't feel comfortable telling you to blow off the Investment Advisor Act of 1940, but I would say make sure you focus on the template, the Uniform Securities Act. Your thoughts, Brian?
That's exactly right. The textbooks take us way down these roads on federal law this and state law this, but it's written by state administrators. So obviously their focus is going to be on the Uniform Securities Act, that's state law, and the state reps and state advisors. Absolutely.
There you go. Do you plan on taking or adding more? I do, Woody. I feel like we don't get enough love to our Series 6 test takers. And so the answer is yes. And it hurts my heart. I don't have more than I do. I still have more than anybody else, but doesn't do test takers any good. The answer is yes. I would tell you, I don't know when have you tested, Woody? Maybe send me an email, dean@guruexamprep.com. One of the very popular things on the channel is when I do practice tests with test takers. And usually I charge people $1,000 to do that. But if you'll let me share the content, maybe I'll do one with you. I'm not promising, I'm very busy, but maybe we can do one together and put it up on the channel. What is the path to taking the 65? Well, people are always hung up on this. You are not an accredited investor because you take a 65. If you read closely, what it is a 65 in good standing. I don't know how many people, Brian, are taking 65 thinking it makes them an accredited investor. It does not. Brian's significant other, Stacy, is an investment advisor. right? So she would be an accredited investor because she's an investment advisor in good standing. She's associated with a firm. So you're not going to be able to work in the field immediately unless you are at a firm. There you go. Now, if you're 65 in good standing with the firm, you are an accredited investor. Brian, I don't know if you got this debrief, but they now are asking on Series 7 about Series 7s being accredited investors. A guy told me he had a question where they were asking who the following is accredited. None of them met the 1,200,000 or 300, but there was a Series 7. And he was like at 180, and he was the accredited investor in the question. So,
and you know something too, because I've researched this. I've gotten this question too.
Yeah.
That some states actually differ in their
oh really?
for accredited investors. They call it a Uniform Securities Act, but
yeah, it's a template. Yeah, it's really a template. You're not being tested on
right. Some states
so you
have
think
their
some
own.
states do allow the 65 to be accredited, huh? Wow.
So I can't tell anybody whether they're going to be an accredited investor. It depends on what state you're in, whether you're affiliated with a firm.
By the way, here's a really good example. It's very testable. The Uniform Securities Act, NASA, North American Security Administrators Association, on the template has said we think investment advisor reps should have 12 hours of continuing ed. Absolutely. 6 hours on regulatory or ethical, 6 hours on products. That's very testable. But last I checked, only 26 states had actually adapted that or adopted that as the rule in their state. So, it's still on the test and you've got to answer accordingly. But,
Exactly.
Man, Richard, I wish you would go this week because, man, we have been on fire with 24 passes. So, Richard, 24s are the cohort of 24 test takers whine more about test prep vendors than any other cohort of any other tests.
It's been that way for 20 years, team.
Yeah.
Really
Richard, whether you have Kaplan and you say, should I get another, or you could find in social media people who hate Kaplan and say STC, I got them and I passed. I hate STC. I hate Notman. I love Notman. So here's what I would tell you, Richard. I am a Kaplan person. I'm agnostic about study materials, but Richard, I just had a lady. She is so aggressive and a bright lady. I didn't even bring up other study materials because she's got 4 days that she wants to devote to trying to pass the 24 in a way that I think is not the right way to do it. I said, listen, I don't think this is the way to do it, but hey, I'm with you. I'm on your team and we're checking in twice a day. We're working on things. Very, very aggressive. And Richard, I didn't bring up other study materials because it's too late and, it would just cloud her mind. And she passed. And all she did for 4 days was Kaplan. And if I thought Kaplan wasn't sufficient, I would have said she needs to add it. Now, second part, 24s usually have resources. They may not have the time that baby brokers have. They may not have 4 months with pay to pass a test, but they do have resources. And I believe in multiple vendors for all exams if you have the resources. I have another call with a 24 this evening. I'm in a 24 week or so. I just have 24s all over the place. But anyways, this particular person is using STC and Kaplan. And whether you have Kaplan and go to STC or STC and go Kaplan, your scores are going to immediately drop because you're not used to the phraseology. And what I was telling him, Richard, is use that for confirmation of test issues. STC talks about it. Kaplan talks about it. Dean talks about it on the channel. Confirmation. It's something you need to know, right? If Kaplan talks about it, STC doesn't. So I recommend another test prep vendor. I would say, yes, sometimes it's time to get a different voice. I use the analogy. People are probably upset, get tired of Dean Sports analogies, but sometimes we need a different voice in the locker room. Do I think Mark Malone is a great NBA coach? I do. But, when Nicola isn't listening anymore, you got to go, right? We got to get a new voice. I thought it was so interesting that, boy, Thibodeau, sometimes Tim Thibodeau, he coaches the Knicks, and he does things I go, I don't get that at all. What is this guy thinking? But what I thought, Richard, was really cool is that when they were talking to Jalen Brunson, he stood up for his coach. It could have been very easy for him to say, yeah, I think he's a nutcase too. I don't know what he's thinking. But I like that. So the answer is yes. I would recommend another test prep vendor as a different voice not to confuse you. If you're going to get confused, then don't. And I would recommend Notman. I think Notman has just revised their 24. I haven't talked to Brian Marks yet, Richard, but I'm going to buy it myself because I'm tutoring a lot of Notman 24 people. And so I feel like I should have that just so I know what they're looking at. And I'm going to see, perhaps, Brian, they'll give me backstage access to the Q Bank, and we'll see. Maybe not. Maybe they, think I might, put it on YouTube.
Talk to our friend Mark.
Yes. Long-winded answer, Richard. The answer is yes. Brian, you believe in multiple vendors?
For the 24, for all of them, there's yes. But for the 24, I do like a mixture of Kaplan and STC.
Yeah,
really.
I think between the two, they're both reputable. Tire material, do you see the biggest hurdle? Should I try to master most? Well, I don't. There's no magic there. I mean, for every test taker, the biggest hurdle could be a different hurdle, right? So some people, I have accounts that don't struggle on balance sheets. So I don't know how to answer that. I guess every hurdle is different, based on the test taker. You have any thoughts on the biggest hurdle, Brian?
Podcast
again. So Eric, go
watch
watch
our podcast. I'm telling you, it's going to happen. It's very
different types of spreads are not important at all. No, I think mainly what you're going to see on the test is vertical or price spreads. And then from there, credit or debit, exercise or expire, widen or narrow, gain, loss, break even, bullish or bearish. I don't think they'll get into horizontal spreads or calendar spreads or diagonal spreads. Depends on your draw. But if you told me that you missed the mark on 7 because you couldn't distinguish between price spreads, calendar spreads, and diagonal spreads, I would say, I don't believe that. Now, what I would say is you can fumble your way to an answer because, it is what it is, right? Time spreads would be different expirations. Diagonal would be different strikes and different expirations. Everything's different. And then the mantra I would tell you that's very important in spreads is lower, higher, longer. Repeat after me. Lower, higher, longer. Lower strike call contracts always have greater premiums. Lower, higher, longer. Higher strike put contracts always have greater premiums. Lower, higher, longer. Longer term option contracts always have greater premiums. I think one of the most difficult questions you get are not identifying the spread as diagonal, price, or time, but rather identifying the spread when it's missing premiums, where they give you a spread and they don't tell you what the premiums are. And then they ask you to determine debit or credit. That's where that mantra, I think, can come in handy. Your thoughts, Brian, on identifying different types of spreads?
There may be a horizontal or time spread question on the Series 7, depending upon your draw.
Yeah.
But absolutely, there's always a question as well on spreads without premiums, and whether it's a credit or debit, and then corresponding to that, whether it's bullish or bearish.
Right on. And remember, Noah, there, the larger premium dominates, right? So the lower strike call is dominant, the higher strike put is dominant. Whatever you're doing in that option is going to be dominant, right? So if I'm long the lower strike on a call spread, that's going to be dominant. And the longer term option would be dominant to determine Brian's point about bullish or bearish. That really determines what sandbox you're in, so to speak. Brian and I use the matrix. I think, what do you call it? The beauty,
the aerobic diagram.
Yeah. But both of us, you would want to find out what box you're in, what sandbox you're in, and that's helpful. Another memory aid device, Noah, is SOTA. SOTA, same option, different action. So in identifying spreads, it's SOTA, same option, call, different action, buy, sell, right? Okay, well, you're welcome, Harold. You're welcome. We're here every Tuesday, 5 p.m. Arizona time. Well, I'm here every Tuesday. Brian is kind enough to join us most Tuesdays, but if he's got a good hockey game or something going on, we
life
gets
in the way.
Yeah, as we said, life. He has a larger life than I have. Yeah, I'm with you. 2 weeks of my closest option will pay. Yeah, there you go.
I was wondering about that.
I get it. It is what it is. RDR2 clips. Hello, Jens. Past the 6. Woo! I believe Brian, do you ever attempted to start every 6 class by saying, why don't you just take a 7? 'Cause you're going to need one eventually. I don't know how many people take 6s and 26s, and then they got to go back and take a 7 and a
But
20.
you got to look at the type of firms. Those
Yeah,
firms
that's
don't
true.
do
That's true.
37 work.
Good point.
For
Good point.
the rep, it's
Yeah.
a bigger feather in there.
Well, we've answered this previously, and let me answer it again. It wasn't this particular question, but it was pretty much the same answer I'm about to give. You can pass out of a Series 6 based on a good effort on your SIE. The 6 is mostly recognition. Like the SIE, mostly recognition, little practical application. Like, can you tell me the percentage sales charge when given the NAV and the BOP, for example? 7 is a different dragon altogether, a different beast. So how different? They're extremely different. The 7, as we were answering earlier, I don't know how long you've been with us this evening. We were talking about the 7 having judgment questions. The 6 has very few judgment questions. It's when they ask you like which mutual fund should it be, it's a little more obvious which mutual fund it is than when it's a 7 and it's an asset allocation question kind of thing. So I think very, very, very different, and should be approached as, again, a much different dragon. This dragon, I think of an SIE and a 6 as kind of a Puff the Magic Dragon. The 7's a real dragon. So make sure you treat it accordingly. Brian, your thoughts? I think very different. What's your thoughts?
Absolutely. It's two different things. Yep. No
Okay, Brian and I have a hard stop here. We're coming up on an hour. Don't do anything on the board yet. If you want to win the weekly drawing for the coaching call, wait till I get the tool out. And then whatever Brian writes on the board, you got to put it in the chat exactly the way he puts it in the board. But wait till I get the tool going. I just want to finish up what we got. Wording on different questions. Well, that's what Acolyte. That's one reason I like getting different vendors, because different vendors, you get a better mix and understanding concepts rather than particular questions. I would tell you, though, that the vendors you should know work very hard to try to approximate the test as best they can, knowing that they can't infringe on copyright. But that's why you shouldn't memorize questions and answers, right? You should make sure you understand the concept so you can deal with any wording or grammar, any kind of a draw that you can take down any kind of a draw. So that's the solution to that. Kaplan packages, you should buy the cues. Yeah, live on demand. If you go to my, where do I have the link? There's a link to Kaplan, and you can go to the Kaplan. You'll see I'm teaching. I don't know. I'm teaching the 7, I think August. It'll show me Dean Tenney as the instructor for the Kaplan August 7. And I'm doing a Kaplan, their Guru Exam Prep. I'm not a Kaplan employee. Kaplan contracts with my LLC, Guru Exam Prep, to teach classes, collaborative classes. So most of those classes are people who are joining us from social media, and it's a little different than a Kaplan class. But anyways, that being said, it will still list me as the instructor for Series 66 in July and a Series 7 in August. You can send me an email. I'm more than happy to send you the link. All right. 50-50 strategy math questions last time. All strat. Yeah, every draw is different. So how many times have we seen this, Brian? Somebody gets their printout, and then they only study the things they missed because they were strong, and then they forget the stuff they were strong on, and now they get a different draw, and they miss again. So, don't just study what you miss. Study everything. Well, that's having a large draw on life insurance. Final review. Yep, there you go. Stephanie, you need a thesaurus. I'm with you. They're jerks. Okay. But it's just like whining about the refs, right? There's no sense of whining about the refs. You just got to, keep playing. Looked into your tutoring, but unsure. Well, I don't solicit and try and convince people to do tutoring because most of my tutoring is referral and it's expensive. It's $300 an hour. And I think if you're unsure about tutoring, you shouldn't be doing tutoring. There's lots of free things that you can do. You can buy Brian's supplement for $100. You can watch my videos. But I'm more than happy. It's like an airline flight. I think I'm booked solid for the next 2-3 weeks, but more than happy to help you. But I would, you should be using tutoring. I don't know, Brian, what you think of to plug gaps. You shouldn't be using questions, tutoring as a substitute for doing the work.
Exactly.
3 questions on business development companies. Wow, that's crazy. I think that's odd too. I would expect 1, considering it's not a common vessel unless you're dealing with that's not true. You could, Joe Sixpacks can invest in BDCs depending on how it's organized. So I'm not sure about that one. 5, 7, third. There you go. Okay. I think we're ready, Brian. Hold on. Let me grab the Wheel of Fortune here.
On a BAB. Wow.
Wheel of Fortune. Here we go. Boom. Okay. Let me just give me a sec, Brian. Okay. Should I put it up and then put it up and then guys, Brian's going to put it on the board, but don't put it in until I get it on my Wheel of Fortune. And it's got to be just the way Brian wrote it. Summer. Boom. Okay. There we go. And make sure we got it. So here we go. Let me go grab it, Brian. Present. Share screen. Boom. Giveaway tool. Oh, there we go. Okay. Woohoo. Let me get rid of that. Now, remember, if you win, what you do is you go to deankennytutoring.setmore.com and you go to the class tab and you'll see coaching calls and you register there. That's what you win. Bring your questions. And when I show up, I answer any questions you may have. I put them every other week. So there might be another coaching call winner joining us. But like I say, that's what it's all about. All right. Anybody else want to participate? You put Summer into the chat, just as he has it there on the exam, on the thing there. And boom. Meantime, I'll take care of these last couple questions. Should I expect the SIE exam questions to be easier or harder than the practice? I don't like answering that, but test prep vendors are usually the variances in your favor. I'll say it that way. You would expect a higher score on that. But if you're at 85, there's diminishing returns, and you should be fine. You should go take the exam. Series 7 tomorrow. I feel confident. Get some sleep. As we said, Ivan, be confident in your execution of study plan, confident in yourself, and most important, confident in your answers tomorrow. Don't change the answers tomorrow. Margin of error. There you go. Summer, Kelvin, thanks for joining us from Facebook. We broadcast to Facebook, LinkedIn, and what else do we? Oh, and YouTube, obviously. So, all right, let's see who wins. Boom.
Let's do it.
All right, Acolyte. You're the winner. So you're the winner. I hope you're not testing tomorrow. If you test tomorrow, that ain't going to work. But go to deankennytutoring.setmore.com, go to the coaching call class tab, and register for your coaching call winner. And then I'll see you there, and we'll talk about whatever you want to talk about for whatever exam you happen to be taking. All right. So, Brian, we did it. We got done right when we planned on time this time. Sometimes we run over, not intentionally, but, sometimes things are just happening and we run over. But tonight we finished on relatively on time. Yeah. And so, as I always say, remember inch by inch. Oh, in fact, here it comes across my screen. Yeah. You see my screen there, Brian? Series 7 Guru.
I saw the inch by inch.
With your permission, Brian, with your permission. Let's see. Did you see the inch by inch? Here it comes.
Here it comes. Here it comes.
With your permission, I think I might add, you take the test. Don't let the test take you.
You got it.
Do I have your permission to put
Absolutely.
that up? All right. Okay. Well, remember, inch by inch, your exam's a cinch. Yard by yard, your exam is hard. And Brian, you say?
Keep it simple. Stay with what you know. You take the test. Don't let the test take you.
Woohoo! All right, everybody. We'll see you next Tuesday. Till then, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.